Tonight on the Headline Humboldt, the Humboldt Area Foundation once again leads the charge to tackle a major local issue. We talk with Jana Ganion from the Blue Lake Rancheria about the rising risk from climate change and what can be done. Also, KEET contributor Ryan Hutson files an in-depth interview with Charmaine Lawson about her ongoing quest for justice after the murder of her son. Coming up next. Region and yes, our world has a massive list of needs to be met, crises demanding investments of both treasure and attention. Locally, we've done a decent job identifying such issues, whether they be social, economic, or environmental. That's a good, solid first step. We have to recognize our problems to confront them, and our community is full of caring people who refuse to wear ideological blinders. Yet it's one thing to identify our problems and another to actually get them fixed. On the North Coast, one organization has consistently positioned itself as a point of leverage on almost every major issue we face. The Humboldt Area Foundation has been a philanthropic powerhouse on a long list of concerns, and its investments have funded a wide variety of potential solutions. Its newest partnership, the Redwood Core Project, involves several prominent local organizations seeking to organize and expedite efforts to address the looming threat. It's no secret that Humboldt County, and especially the Humboldt Bay area, will be among the most significantly impacted areas in the state when it comes to climate change. Rising sea levels especially are expected to inundate local infrastructure and force widespread action to preserve our communities. Some of these towns and suburbs already see regular coastal flooding whenever a storm blows in and the tides rise higher than normal. The need, obviously, is high. Tonight we speak with Jana Ganion from the Blue Lake Rancheria, another one of those philanthropic organizations and one of the principal partners of the new climate effort, to talk about how the program will work and how important it is to address these issues while there's still time. There's no doubt whatsoever that our world now faces what is perhaps the most significant challenge in our lifetimes. We can either sit back and submit, or we can work hard to limit our own carbon contributions and offer that expertise and experience to other at-risk communities. It all starts with an ambitious goal. The Redwood Core Project will endeavor to make the Redwood region the first proven carbon sequestering rural area in the U.S. by 2030. You have to aim high if you want to get off the ground. And now, the interview. Welcome back, Jana. You've been on the show before, so it's a pleasure to have you back.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, James.
No problem. Thank you. So you are the Sustainability Director from the Blue Lake Rancheria, and I believe you're heading up the Core Project. Is that right?
That's right. So I'm the Sustainability and Government Affairs Director for the Blue Lake Rancheria. For those who may not know, it's a federally recognized tribal government located adjacent to the city of Blue Lake out in the Mad River Valley. And in addition to that role, I am essentially the launch lead and senior advisor to the Redwood Region Climate and Community Resilience Hub, which, as you said, James, is a new initiative that is being incubated at the Humboldt Area Foundation. And so I'm delighted to be here today to talk a little bit more about it and why it's necessary and what we hope to do.
So, I mean, everyone has begun the process, I think, over the last few years of trying to inculcate the idea that we're under a climate crunch in their future plans. How is this organization going to help to organize local efforts toward that, confrontation?
Yeah, so I think one of the ways in which we see climate and community resilience working on the North Coast and throughout the Redwood region is that certain organizations, certain entities are doing amazing accelerated work in climate action, both to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve resilience in natural and built systems and critical infrastructure and facilities at the same time. But what we also see is that a lot of the times those efforts are siloed. We're not knowledge sharing enough. Sometimes plans and these amazing goals and activities that have been identified are not working in enough coordination with maybe the jurisdiction or the community next door. And in particular, there are still a lot of people, a lot of communities, a lot of organizations that are left out of the discussions and the dialogues that need to be included, frankly. Most of those are under-resourced, marginalized communities, communities that have experienced historic and current racism. And so part of the Core Hub is to really do concerted outreach to ensure that as we transition to a healthier, decarbonized society, that the benefits of that transition accrue to frontline communities and those who need it most, because those are also typically the people and places that have contributed least to the causes of the climate emergency. And so we want to turn essentially a vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle for those people.
Absolutely. We mentioned before the show, we were chatting briefly, and you said that setting an ambitious goal off the top is an important way to, to motivate the project. Making the Redwood region the first rural area to be carbon sequestering by 2030. Can you talk a little bit about how ambitious that is and how possible it is?
Sure. So the Blue Lake Rancheria tribe with its strategic partners like the Schatz Energy Research Center, Redwood Coast Energy Authority, Humboldt State University, and a host of others, in its work to develop low carbon solar energy based infrastructure as one example, they set a very aggressive zero carbon by 2030 goal. And then, as people know, projects typically, once you've set that goal, projects line up behind it with relative ease. It hasn't been easy, but it has been possible and successful. And we've been able to get more resources into this region and deploy more benefits for the region in the resilience and emergency preparedness space in particular than we would have otherwise without that sort of bold goal as an organizing principle. The Humboldt Area Foundation has these bold goals to create a thriving, just, healthy, and equitable region, to help ensure racial equity, to perpetuate thriving youth and families, to build healthy ecosystems and environment, and ultimately provide a just economy and economic development that in many ways supports all those objectives. The Core Hub has this overarching climate goal of a 2030 carbon sequestering region because the international, national, tribal, other scientists, climate scientists, environmental scientists are telling us that's the timeline we have to hit. The great news is we can do it. It's just going to take more coordinated effort. And the reason to do it here is because we have some good superlatives and some bad superlatives. On the good side, we have sort of this amazing set of expertise across tribal, academic, government, economic sectors that can come together to help us hit a climate goal and do what they call carbon life cycle accounting, which basically says, how much climate forcing emissions is any activity that you're doing going to result in. Here we have these amazing forests, both public and private forest lands that are going to help us absorb carbon and fix that carbon into storage for decades and centuries to come. We also have this ocean environment and places like our eelgrass beds that also work to sequester carbon. But What we don't have is kind of a recipe for regions like ours, rural regions that may be capacity constrained to do some of this math and accounting, to be able to take a holistic view of it across tribal nations, across cities and counties and public and private sectors, community-based organizations, marginalized communities, and create a recipe that that we can have confidence in, that we're making progress. So lots of businesses, for example, will establish carbon goals. Now the work is to prove it with real numbers, that the activities that you're conducting day to day are resulting in less greenhouse gases than before. The methodologies are technical and kind of wonky, but the bottom line is we have the components in terms of natural and built systems, in terms of human expertise to pull it together and see if it's possible.
So I was going to say, it's sort of ironic that we are likely to be among the most impacted areas in the state, but then we're also sort of uniquely situated by our, the wilderness areas and the ocean and the coastal environments to kind of address it at the same time, even though, our area is not by any means responsible for most of the carbon that's been created. We are kind of an ideal laboratory.
That's right. And we have, so the good superlatives are the expertise and the willingness of people to work together. The bad superlatives are the fact that we have the fastest net sea level rise here of anywhere on the Pacific coast. That's due to plate tectonics, land subsiding kind of underneath the ocean.
Plate tectonics.
But also plate tectonics, I know, from, what was that, 6th grade science, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's paired with, of course, sea level rise from the climate crisis, from our greenhouse gas emissions. And we're a low-lying area. So in 100 years, a lot of our region is going to be underwater that is not underwater today. There's lots of maps out there that show this. There's going to be a new sea level rise tool from the United States Geologic Society. I think that's the publishing agency. Mm-hmm. It's going to downscale to Humboldt for us, so we can see it we can use the little toggle switches and see what's going to happen. But the bottom line is we need to take action now. And a lot of the funding, and here's, I think, a main point for the next 2 to 4 years, is that the funding coming down from the federal government and the state government, the $15 billion investment that Governor Newsom announced just a week and a half ago for climate resilience, most of that money is couched in language that includes terms like regional, landscape, collaborative consortiums. And so we know that to be competitive for those funding sources, that we'll need to develop this regional approach, that will need to be lots of partners involved. And luckily, we know how to do that. So I feel really optimistic that we're going to be able to exercise sort of that early actor advantage. If we state this goal first and loudly, we will position ourselves for other resources to be brought into this county and this region that we wouldn't have otherwise had access to.
One question I have is, obviously they're in the middle of negotiations over the Build Back Better Act with Congress. Huffman has obviously been very invested in how that's going. There's the hard infrastructure package and then also the softer infrastructure package, both of which involve some, climate spending. Have you guys identified any funds within that would apply to this, or is it too soon to tell?
There has been one funding opportunity that has basically come and gone. But it's only the first one, and it gives a window into the recipe. So it was called Build Back Better's Regional Resilience Challenge, I think. And essentially it was a 2-phased funding opportunity. The first phase was for a smaller amount of money for planning. And that was, and competitive applications for that really had pre-identified a slate of projects, for climate resilience that had already been kind of vetted and agreed to in the region. That was put into the planning application. And then once the planning portion was done, then you applied for the second round, which was actual construction infrastructure build dollars. But I think we've seen that both on the federal side and the state side as kind of a formula. So a little bit of money up front to get a plan in place, which is welcome to augment maybe some capacity constraints that we have here locally, and to bring other people who are left out of these discussions to the table. And then that planning set of awardees would be in place to apply for then deployment, bringing that plan into action.
Yeah.
And so, that's just one window into it. It's a little bit early to tell, but that's why we need to get in place now. We need to identify what kinds of studies and research we need to do around our infrastructure and critical facilities identification. What are the preferred areas that we have to work with, on land and in the ocean, and how tribal governments, other governments, tribal nations, other kinds of communities, community-based organizations, environmental groups are thinking about this. And the best way to do it is when we don't have a go, no-go decision in front of us, putting pressure on all of it. The best time to do it is now, when we have some time to just brainstorm about it without kind of being in a pressure cooker situation.
We are already out of time. There's so many questions I wanted to ask about wind generation, and Deb Holland, when she came, she identified this area as ideal for that. There's a lot more to cover. I'd like to have you back on the show at some point so we can go over some of this.
Yes, it would be great. The Core Hub's first project among its first projects is offshore wind and community benefits, and broadening that discussion from where it is today.
All right. Well, thank you, Jana, so much for coming on the show again, and I look forward to having you back.
Thanks so much, James.
Thank you. We'll be right back after this short break.
I volunteered for missions. It was just too exciting.
Beware what you wish for.
That's when the ambush starts.
He was walking on the ridge line, and I fired.
You are never the same.
It's important for people to hear these stories, to understand why and when and where we send our sons and daughters to go and fight, but also in helping us to come home.
American Veteran, only on PBS.
With roughly 79,000 residents fully vaccinated, just over 66% of the eligible population, Public Health Officer Ian Hoffman reported this week to the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors that progress is being made. COVID-19 case rates have continued to drop over the past few weeks. Hospitalization rates remain high, however, near where they were during the peaks of the previous surges in winter and in spring. On Wednesday, the FDA granted emergency use authorization to offer boosters for millions of Americans who received a vaccine other than Pfizer. This follows the previous authorization for Pfizer recipients. Those eligible include seniors age 65 and older and those age 18 and above at high risk for serious illness. Hoffman predicted that hospitalization rates will likely fall 2 to 4 weeks after overall infection numbers decline. Hoffman also reported that monoclonal antibody clinics at St. Joseph have helped mitigate the Delta surge's impact on the local healthcare system. KEET contributor Ryan Hutson met up with Charmaine Lawson, mother of murdered HSU student David Josiah Lawson, for an in-depth interview on how her son's killing remains unaddressed and how she plans to keep up the fight for justice.
Charmaine Lawson returned to Humboldt County last weekend for a monthly vigil in honor of her son, Humboldt State University student David Josiah Lawson, who was stabbed to death in Arcata several years ago and whose homicide remains unprosecuted in Humboldt County. On the county courthouse steps in Eureka, Lawson announced a new project designed to draw attention to what she and others feel is a failure of the system in her son's case and other failures of law enforcement and public officials. I caught up with Charmaine Lawson and Cristina Lastra at the Centro del Pueblo Sanctuary Garden in Arcata to learn more about the Justice in Humboldt project and Lawson's plight for justice in the homicide of her son. 19-year-old David Josiah Lawson.
Like, look what we have going on today. We have the community here, and they're working and they're cleaning up the garden for fresh fruits and vegetables for anyone that is in need. That is what we do as a community, right? We give back. We give back. And my son DJ he had the biggest heart, and he loved to give. So this being here is in honor of DJ. I celebrate him every single day. I miss him like crazy, but I know that something good is going to come out of losing him.
Following a candid conversation off the record, I asked Charmaine how she felt the current APD Chief Ahern is handling the ongoing investigation.
It's an honor to be here with Charmaine and to continue the fight after 4.5 years for justice for Josiah. So we just had a lengthy conversation with Chief Ryan Ahern, and he is an advocate and a supporter for justice in this county, and we really appreciate him.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, he's been upfront. He follow up. He fill me in on what's going on as it relates to DJ's case, and I'm holding him accountable. I'm holding him to justice for my son. I'm not giving up, and he knows that I'm going to keep fighting, and he's fighting with me. Like he said, he know they arrested the right person, even though he came into the case almost 3 years later. He's from a larger city. He's from San Diego, and he knows what justice is, and he knows the corruption that our APD, former disgraced Chapman, I would say the lack of care and really wanted to get justice for my son. I see the difference in this new chief, and I see that he's sincere, he's honest, he's forthcoming, and it's a refresher to see someone that care about justice and care about my son. And there are good officers out there. There are good police officers, and I think he's one of them. There's a whole lot of bad ones, but I think he's one of them. And it's, again, he's standing with us. He's standing in solidarity with us, and he wants justice for DJ, and he wants justice for the BIPOC community. And there's a lot of missing and murdered indigenous people here. Christina, her mom was murdered 30 plus years ago. So we have something in common.
They called it a car accident. So again, there was no proper investigation, there was no following protocol. It was basically just dismissed, a lot like the murder of David Josiah Lawson's murder was dismissed. So she and we have this bond over something so egregious, so dark, but together we have created justice in Humboldt.
Yeah.
Seeking to recruit a progressive attorney to run against Fleming in the next election, the group has purchased 2 billboards advertising the campaign. Lastra explained.
Please tell us what is the goal for Justice in Humboldt, and how can people get involved?
We have created a website called justiceinhumboldt.com. It does have a certain degree of resources. If you have a complaint against Maggie Fleming, we have on the website where you can contact the California Bar and submit a complaint. We have voter registration, a link to voter registration, exposing behind the Redwood curtain. And it talks about
any type of
injustice
yes,
that is coming from the judicial system, police, and so on. Yes. So we have a whole section dedicated to DJ, to David Lawson. We have a section dedicated to education. There's been a lot of mistreatment of Native American students here in Humboldt County, and there's been a number of lawsuits. But in a nutshell, it's basically holding tax-funded institutions accountable for unjust behavior, and supporting BIPOC, MMIW, and LGBTQ plus community. So that's really what our main focus is to make sure that not only are we informing them, but that we are supporting them, and that we are ultimately will be fighting for them if they're faced with injustice and they have nowhere to turn and they feel like the system is failing them.
Okay, great.
Perfectly said.
Reflecting on the past 4.5 years, Lawson conveyed a message of solidarity but did not withhold sharp criticism for the district attorney of Humboldt County.
Absolutely. I go into business places and faded posters are still there, original posters, so I'm grateful that they are keeping DJ's memory alive as well. But yeah, for the ones who are refusing, shame on them, because like Christina said, HSU students is keeping you afloat. And again, make Humboldt County beautiful again. Make everyone feel welcome. And put up a poster of a young man that was murdered. Probably ate in your restaurant or been into your store. You know, so how do you just say his life doesn't matter? This is not about politics. It's not. This is about a murder that took place less than 10 minutes from the university.
How
and this
long
is
ago?
4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
April 15, 2017. I have not seen my son's face. He have not hugged me, have not called to say, Mom, I love you. I've missed birthdays and Christmas and Thanksgiving. I've missed all those. I've missed everything. He'll never come back. And how do you just say his life doesn't matter? It doesn't take a rocket scientist. The DNA evidence speaks for itself. He was in an altercation with one person, Kyle Christopher's owner. Layla Ortega said, I hope that nigga dies. My son died. This should be treated as a hate crime. So no, I have reached out to the new Attorney General, A.G. Banda, and we're hoping and praying that he will take DJ's case. So there's so many unsolved murders here. Let the murderers know that you will be held accountable. You will be held accountable. You cannot keep doing this and getting away with it. It will keep going on if we don't stop it. Enough is enough. Enough is enough.
A $55,000 reward is still offered in the Lawson case, and Arcata Police Department maintains that the investigation is still active. Reporting for Headline Humboldt, I'm Ryan Hutson.
In the interest of full disclosure, District Attorney Maggie Fleming is on the KEET Board of Directors. That's all our time for this evening. Thanks so much for joining us. I don't know about you guys, but I'm enjoying the heck out of the rain these past few days. Despite all the bleak news and troubling trends, the rain still falls, folks. And I, for one, always feel kind of shiny after a long shower outside. Stay tuned, stay informed.